So, how important is it to have cheaper and faster cross-border payments, especially with respect to a possible and potential US-based CBDC system, right? And so, really, kind of the crutch of this argument for such a kind of factor really stems from having a more interoperable CBDC, right? And so, according to the Office of Science and Technology from the White House in a paper that they published not too long ago, they define interoperability as it refers to whether and how a CBDC system can communicate, execute transactions, or transfer data with other payment systems, right? So this is including like fiat systems, international payment systems, other CBDC systems, and even other kind of like private-ish digital assets like stable coins or whatever, just to give examples. Other forms of payment systems, right? How can it communicate with those? That's what we mean by interoperability. This isn't to be kind of confused with integration, which is more of like a direct access to the other systems in a way. Interoperability is purely just the communication capability between those systems. They don't have to be able to understand either the users or the system itself, meaning the CBDC system, doesn't have to understand the other payment system that it's interacting with, just communicate with it, right? So that's kind of the difference between interoperability and integration, right? And so benefits really for looking at having more of this interoperability, right? So as you can expect from being able to communicate with other systems, this could lead to payments innovation, right? And to quote from the same paper, which to get this out of the way, it'll be in the link, or a link will be in the description down below, just so you guys can find and read the paper yourself. It's like about 60 pages or so, and it breaks down different US or potential US design choices for a CBDC, right? To kind of put that out there, right? And so quoting from that with respect to payments innovation, they say it has envisioned international, private sector, and non-government organization CBDC interlinkages have explored asset swaps through trusted intermediary, interconnected CBDC ledgers and holding multiple currencies within a single ledger, right? And so looking at how to actually function as a payment system, right? And possibly even having the private sector be involved in this. And so when we're talking about interoperability, this includes our current kind of domestic commercial banking system and our fiat system and that sort of thing, right? And so how is our current financial system going to be able to communicate with a new potential US CBDC system, right? And something to keep in mind. Like, is it going to be like something that you can transfer in between instantly? Maybe even at like a POS, point of sale system or whatever, when you're actually at the vendor or whatever you're doing, right? Or do you have to like go into your whatever account, however they decide to set this up, and basically transfer things over and that kind of thing? Like, how many kind of hurdles is it going to be, or is it going to be more seamless to where you don't even notice the difference, right? So keeping that in mind, another benefit for having a more interoperable CBDC system would be increased uptake by marginalized communities, to kind of use some of their terminology, right? And this is really going the whole financial inclusion route, which is also where the whole cross-border payments kind of comes in. They're kind of one and the same in a way. Obviously, I guess the most obvious connection between the two ideas is for like remittance payments and that sort of thing, and basically sending payments or currency or however you want to define it overseas to, maybe family members or whatever the case may be, right? And then this also obviously ties into like AML and CFT compliance, anti-money laundering and counter-financing terrorism compliance, right? And so one thing with respect to that specifically, meaning the regulation compliance, is these entities, if the system itself allows for more intermediation, then you'd basically have more private sector entities in a way that already have to deal with this stuff and to begin with, doing it for the CBDC system as well. And so basically you're allowing kind of someone that already has experience to deal with it, rather than trying to create from anew and hope, the government gets it done right? Especially if it's going to be more public in that respect, where if the alternative is the government takes care of it. So you can kind of start to see where the design choices for intermediation and interoperability really kind of mesh together. And sometimes it's difficult to distinguish between the two, but we are talking about different aspects of the system itself, where intermediation is more of like having other entities come in and innovate, provide services and that sort of thing. And then interoperability is, again, the ability to communicate with other systems. And so the fact that one of the other systems, and probably the most prominent one, is our current fiat and commercial banking system, they really mesh together, especially in that respect, to where it's hard to distinguish, right? And kind of a final major benefit for having a more interoperable CBDC system, right, would be like the privacy and security part, right? So basically, because there's more interlinkages between the current system and would be more interlinkages between the current system and a potential CBDC system. You'd basically have, again, those basically consumer protections and stuff from our traditional banking system and so on would apply, or could more easily be applied to the CBDC system, right? So again, because those entities who would be dealing with it would have more experience and so on, right? And now there are also some drawbacks in the same respect, meaning like with respect to privacy and security, because you are adding more interlinkages, which means more kind of points of attack for like cybersecurity issues and that sort of thing. You're increasing the surface of attack, and that sort of thing, right? So again, kind of the biggest takeaway for the benefits of having a more interoperable CBDC is really kind of the cross-border payments and also the financial inclusion kind of aspect. That's really their major selling points, to be honest. That's one of the things that I've noticed, they being, the entities that are publishing these papers and are really kind of in charge of this sort of thing, like the White House. I've also done some papers I did a series of papers that was I went over a series of papers that was published by the BIS, and it was a collaboration of the world central banks. So like the Board of Governors, the BOJ, Bank of England, that Swiss National Bank, and stuff like those types of central banks, right? Very kind of, I guess, your G7 type-ish central banks, right? May have been all of them, but I don't remember the whole list off the top of my head. It's been a few months. So anyways, that's really kind of the biggest takeaway, is how more interoperability in the CBDC system would apply for basically the cross-border payments and international kind of transactions in that respect, right? So that being said, there are also drawbacks to having a more interoperable CBDC, right? And I will do a separate video, and it'll be up on the end screen in the corner, right, going over the drawbacks of such a thing, to where there's the drawbacks of having more interoperability. I've already kind of touched on it in the privacy aspect of it, but there's a little bit more to it, right? And so we'll go over more of that over there, and I hope to see you guys there.